Dan Wetzel is a columnist for Yahoo Sports, and his latest column, the headline is, Does Ohio State Belong in the Playoff? College Football Playoff Committee has painted itself into a subjective corner. Dan Wetzel joins us now. Why do you feel this way, Dan?
Well, so this is kind of a nuanced column, which I know America loves nuance at this point, and especially sports talk radio. It's a place for that type of debate. I don't disagree with the idea that Ohio State's one of the 4 best teams, and personally, I would be pretty excited to watch them play in the playoff. But there is a process, and I don't know how we went from a couple years ago where we're keeping Big 12 teams out because they didn't play a 13th game. They only played 12. It was a big deal. They only played 12 games, and other leagues got a, quote, 13th data point was the big bureaucratic term. Ohio State has played 5 games. That's it, 5 games. They'll play 6. 4 of those games, they'll have an off week before it. They may be one of the 4 best teams, but don't you have to play a season to actually make the playoffs? It's like giving someone a chance at the Masters from the forward tees. You still got to kind of, you finish the round, but what exactly happened? So it's an interesting debate because it goes completely against what they used to do. Now we know this has basically always been a subjective thing, and they just reverse engineer a reason on why they like this team or that one. But I don't know what they're going to come up with on Ohio State other than, hey, we just like Ohio State because, when you're playing 6 games and other teams are playing 12, 11, 10, and may have 9, 10 wins, you got to play. I mean, we shouldn't reward it where the easiest way to make the playoff is not to play. I mean, it's a good way to avoid losses, but at some point you have to play the season.
Let me give you full control. You got full control to decide who plays in the playoff. So what would you do?
I'd expand the playoff, but if I can't do that, we'll see who wins this weekend. But obviously, if Alabama wins, Alabama I think should be in either way. I think Notre Dame should be in either way, barring a 50-point destruction at Clemson. I think Clemson is a team that they do have a loss, but if you're talking about a loss, a double overtime on the road without your starting quarterback, I know it's a zero-sum game we play in football, but that is about as close of a loss as you can possibly have. I think Clemson still has a very good argument. I think if Florida beats Alabama, they still get in. Florida at that point would have 9 SEC victories, which is the most of any school to ever play. Because normally you only play 8 regular season games in one conference game. They would have 9. I don't think Florida is necessarily out of this if they beat Alabama. I would take a team like that because I kind of just even if I do love what Ohio State represents and how good they could be, I'm kind of more of a process guy, just the way I think about it. And I look at it and say, geez, I don't know how I can take a team with 9 wins or a team with 6 wins over a team with 9 or something like that. But obviously I think Ohio State's got a good point. This really isn't a bash Ohio State thing. It's just the Big Ten chose to do this. They chose to only play an abbreviated season late with no wiggle room. The SEC is going to get like 68 or 69 of the 71 scheduled games in. You could do this if you spread out your season. The Big Ten chose to do this, and so they have a team that will only have 6 wins. I don't think you can just ignore that.
I was wondering about this last night. USC's 5-0. They got the Pac-12 title game on Friday night against Oregon. If they win, they'd be 6-0. If USC had a recent resume where they were one of the top 5 to 7 teams in college football, how would the committee look at USC if they had this? They haven't been relevant here in a while, but let's say they have 6 wins. They won the Pac-12, and maybe they were up for a national championship time or two in the last 5 to 7 years. Would USC be knocking on the doorstep of making the playoffs?
My guess is yes, and that's kind of the issue you have with this is, and I get it, this is a crazy year, but this is why it's completely subjective. What is it about? Let me put it this way. Coastal Carolina could go 12-0. Okay. Coastal Carolina they
could go 20-0, Dan.
They could go 20-0. You're not going to put them in.
Yeah.
Because you go, it's Coastal Carolina. Their recruits aren't good enough. We don't really, what is this uniform? What Carolina are we even coastaling? What is this, right? This is USC. We know that uniform. We know that fight song. And they have tons of great recruits. They have tons of guys that are going to go to the NFL. Their problem has been not getting it organized and winning. So, yeah, agreed. Like, well, what is it about US? Well, they haven't been winning lately. Or all of a sudden we're going to go, well, some of these games are kind of close. How are they 15th? They're currently 15th in the rankings, right? Coastal, like you said, they go 12-0. They're 13th. They're not even close. But we move Iowa State up because they're in the Big 12. Well, the Big 12 usually gets crushed in the playoff. Like, I don't think the Sun Belt's going to do a whole lot worse than the Big 12 does every year. It's all like, it's not even consistent rank to rank. And so, at the end of the day, especially in a season like this, we end up with like Alabama playing Notre Dame and Clemson playing Ohio State on New Year's Day. Like, set off the fireworks. Fantastic. This is going to be awesome, right? Yeah. But if you dig into this thing, you go, man, this is just ridiculous. None of this makes any sense. There's no consistency. And they're just sitting there going, hey, we want these 4 teams, and we're going to find a way to get these 4 teams.
If they told me that up front, Dan, I would be fine with it. It's just they give you the impression that dare to dream, but I likened it to you go through the hazing part of trying to get into a fraternity, and then they don't let you into the fraternity. and so if you say, look, Ohio State, we love them, that big fan base. Notre Dame, big fan base. Clemson, big fan base. Trevor Lawrence, and you got Alabama, Nick Saban, and they got pedigree. Okay, I understand it, but don't tell me that, 5 games, that you passed the sight test. I think, as you mentioned in your column, the Titanic passed the sight test. Like, this is silly when we go, I don't know if Ohio State's great. Because if you say based off what they did in their biggest game against Indiana, I don't think they were great. The Big Ten was horrible this year, and now you got Northwestern coming up. It doesn't mean that I don't want to see Ohio State. It's just I don't know how one team earns it and another team tries to earn it, but they're not the same. They don't play by the same rules.
Absolutely. And look, again, I don't think Coastal Carolina is one of the 4 best teams. I don't really want to watch Alabama play Coastal Carolina. But if there was ever a year that a school like that should be at least in the discussion, it's this year, because their league was one of the only ones to play non-conference games, so you could check and see how they were. And they beat all the Big 12 teams. Louisiana, who they're going to play in their championship game, beat Iowa State by 17 points in Ames. And it's just like, well, we don't care about that. Coastal Carolina beat BYU. These are the best games. And so if you, at the end of the day, said, look, we have a process, and hey, COVID, Coastal Carolina snuck in on a loophole, at least you go, well, that's the process. Instead, we're just like, there is no process, and we may get a better playoff for it, but yeah, stop with the 2 days of meetings, 16 hours, and we have analytics and proprietary data that you don't know about. That's what we're seeing. What data? Like, you just want Ohio State in there. That's fine. Just say it. I want Ohio State in there.
This feels like the usual suspects with Kaiser Sose. Yeah. Like this committee is Kaiser Sose. I don't know who they are and what they do, but there's some stuff that gets done there, and we'll never know what goes on behind those closed doors there. But if I said you could do 18 playoff, 16 playoff, 12, 16.
I would do 8. I would have 5 automatic bids for the major 5 conferences, which I think would create way more excitement around the country and help spread the wealth out a little bit. Right now, for the last 5 years, no one's cared about the Pac-12 race. You would actually care in a given year if they're going to get in. And what we need to do is create more excitement for more schools so the recruits spread out a little bit. Because what we have right now is basically about 4 to 5 schools that can win a national championship every year. It's Alabama, it's Ohio State, it's LSU, it's Georgia, it's Clemson, and that's pretty much it, actually. Maybe Notre Dame can do it. But and if you look at the recruiting signing day is Wednesday, guess who your top 5 are? There you go. So why not, right? If you're a kid, you're going, I want to play for the title. These are the only schools to get in. So you want to spread it out. I'd have 5 automatic bids, and then I have 3 at large. You might create something where the group of 6, the lower schools, if you reach a certain benchmark, you can get in and bring kind of a Cinderella story in. Maybe you got to be undefeated, or you got to rank certain height. But I think it would create a lot more excitement. You're just adding a game. If you look at all the stuff they used to say, well, we can't do it because we can't play games in December because of finals. Like Rutgers and Nebraska are playing on Friday afternoon. Okay, that's out the window. You know, the sanctity of the Rose Bowl. There ain't going to be a Rose Bowl this year. There's a good chance there's no Rose Bowl. They're just going to move the game. You can totally do it. You'll make more money, which y'all need, and you can set this up. I just think it'd be a much more exciting and it'd be better for the regular season and the overall health of college football. Because the one thing, it's a wonderful sport. I love it, but it is the same suspects every single year because unlike the NFL, the worst team doesn't get the best draft pick. The worst team gets the worst draft pick. The best team gets the best draft pick, so it never ends.
Jim Harbaugh seems to be safe at Michigan, right? Feels like time
Jim Harbaugh seems if he wants to return, he will be able to return. You know, the thinking at Michigan all along from Ward Manuel is that, you know, one bad year is one bad year. Brian Kelly had a 4-win season a couple years ago, and they're going to should make their second playoff appearance in 3. Mark D'Antonio's had bad years at Michigan State comeback. It happens, right? With a great coach. Now, I don't know that Jim Harbaugh has done what Brian Kelly has done at Notre Dame, but he certainly has earned that trust within the Michigan family. You got to remember, his dad was a longtime coach. He's an Ann Arbor guy. He played there for Bo. He, you know, has done a good job. He hasn't beaten Ohio State, but it's really hard to beat Ohio State. But he's done a good job there. You're not having like a bunch of arrests or problems with their thing or anything like that. They have a good recruiting class. So there is a patience at Michigan. And what's kind of funny is in the world of college football, that patience is viewed as insanity. Like, what do you mean you're patient? And they're like, look, we still got like an alum who's a Super Bowl winning coach who won 9 games last year. Yeah, he's not that bad. We'll give him one more season. It was COVID, all that. People are like, you're absolutely crazy. You're nuts. And so that's where we're at. That's part of the fun of college football too. But yeah, he'll be back. But next year, you know, he's got a very good quarterback coming in out of the high school ranks. He's got this kid, Cade McNamara, showed a little bit of promise before getting hurt. He needs a quarterback desperately. He hasn't had a quarterback in Ann Arbor. It's been surprising, and that's been their number one problem.
And that's what's amazing. This is a guy who played quarterback at a high level in the NFL, and he can't find a quarterback. And it feels like there are so many quarterbacks. When I watch college football, usually what you lead with is, who's the quarterback? And if you're successful, chances are it's because of your quarterback. And the fact that Michigan can't find one, and Ohio State keeps churning out these first-round draft picks, and they did it again this year with Justin Fields. I mean, they just rub it in, make it even worse there for Harbaugh. But you'd think he'd have that ability to go, that guy can lead my offense, and he hasn't been able to find that.
Ohio State was so stacked with quarterbacks, they kicked Joe Burrow to the curb. I mean, and this is what Michigan used to be. Tom Brady sat on the bench because you couldn't get on the field. I mean, Michigan is a quarterback school. Harbaugh didn't just play 14 seasons in the NFL, and not as a super talented quarterback. He gutted his way through those 14 seasons. He also coached Andrew Luck in college, coached Alex Smith in that pros. He went to a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick in an event of offense, right? So it's not like, well, he was Peyton Manning's coach. It's like, well, Peyton Manning's kind of his own coach, right? No, he developed guys and maxed guys out. The last thing I thought would be a problem with Jim Harbaugh going to Michigan was they wouldn't have any quarterbacks. I thought they'd have a ton of them. Until he gets one, you can't win, and he hasn't had one, and that's what's held him back. Now, does that change? We'll see. But I think he will be back for one more season unless some NFL team comes in and says, we want you. And there really isn't a lot of buzz on that right now.
Dan, good to talk to you as always. And if I don't talk to you, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we appreciate your time.
That's you too, Mr. Patrick. Talk to you soon.
Dan Wetzel, Yahoo sports columnist.